Okay, this meeting of the Public Utility Commission in Texas will come to order to consider matters that have been duly posted with the Secretary of State for September 27th, 2018. Mr. Journay, will you go through the consent items, please?
Good morning, Commissioners. By individual ballot, the following items were placed on your consent agenda, 1, 5, and 18.
I'll entertain a motion to approve the items just listed.
You have your motion?
Second.
Okay. And item number 9 will not be taken up. Item number 1 was consented. 2 and 3, we do not have anything. So item number 4, docket number 48181. I was fine with the preliminary order that was filed, I believe, yesterday, as it is, except I would not address the threshold issues. So I would take the Roman numeral 1 out and just renumber issues to be addressed.
I'm fine with that. I think that works.
As am I.
Okay. So I will entertain a motion consistent with our discussion.
You have your motion.
Second.
Thank you, Carsey. Item number 5 was consented. Item number 6, docket number 46734. We granted oral argument in this. How long do you want to give them?
We don't need a lot of time. How many people, how many are there?
I assume I'm looking at the right person.
Let's do like 3 minutes each, I guess.
Okay. Stephen, you're going to have to do that timing thing.
All right, I lost my annoying sound when I reset my phone, but I'll do the
Well,
best.
if you don't do it, I'm going to have my daughter teach me how to do it. So. Okay, so if the parties will come on up. It's like musical chairs, Katie. Okay. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Mr. Barclay, how are you doing?
I'm well, Chairman. How are you?
Mr. Moore?
It doesn't, I'm not sure it is on.
I don't think mine is either. The mic's wrong.
Are the mics on?
Said you were ready.
I was.
It was my fault. I was supposed to remind Will, so.
That's the deal we had.
Good morning. Thank you for giving us an opportunity to be heard. I will be brief. What I want to tell you today is that my client, Murphy Exploration and Production Company, Murphy E&P, is doing something, trying to do something that this commission has recognized since at least 2003 is a well-established practice in the oil and gas industry. They have 2 production areas. They want to move those production areas, which have been in development now for some time, off of generators and electrify them with a customer-owned distribution grid. That is a standard practice in the oil and gas business. It allows them to move quickly because oil and gas fields tend to grow over time and then eventually they begin to shrink. It allows them the flexibility to add facilities and connect new facilities as they're needed, to start removing facilities when they're needed. If you look at the testimony from one of the Medina co-op witnesses, they even say that because of the cyclical nature of the oil and gas industry, they make their oil and gas customers pay 100% of the cost to serve them because of the impacts it has on other customers. In other words, their policies for how they charge oil and gas companies are based on the premise that they don't really like them because they're a nuisance. But they're here today fighting in order to try to keep this oil and gas load for themselves. Why do we think that's not appropriate? Each of these production areas really is analogous to a large industrial facility. Yes, there are multiple central processing units, there are multiple gathering systems, there are multiple leases and ranches in each of them. But there is an overall development plan. It's actually in a couple places in the record. There's a field development plan for this area. And when you look at the drilling plans in there, and when you look at the discussion of land rights, you will see that they refer to two areas. The Cone KBS area, those are the names of ranches. That is essentially the north field. And they refer to the Briggs area. And that is effectively the south field. Murphy has already built 13 customer-owned distribution systems in the Carnes Electric Cooperative area. They have not been controversial to date. These areas were not designed to manipulate or subvert service territories. They were designed, and they have the shape and location they do because of geology and geography. As it turns out, they do straddle service territories, and we believe, based on the precedent in the Cogdell case in 2010, that we have a right to choose our provider. That case was decided in 2010. There has not been a slippery slope, an avalanche, or a Pandora's box of companies coming to you trying to get around service territories. This is the first case 8 years later, but we do think it fits the facts. Thank you.
Jerry, why don't you go next?
Thank you. Chairman, Commissioners, good morning. Jerry Huerta on behalf of AEP Texas. I'm going to keep it very brief. Our primary interest in this case is receiving certainty from the commission through a determination of the matter in the case. As the utility that's the subject of this case, we need a determination of whether we have the obligation and the right to serve these two consuming facilities, the two fields. We're in a catch-22 situation in the sense that through the customer request from Murphy, we are told that we have an obligation to serve the two fields. However, if we don't serve the fields, then we may be subject of a complaint from the customer saying that we're not meeting our obligation to serve. If we do serve the fields, then we're subject to a complaint from the co-ops on an argument that we are violating PURA because we're serving outside of our certificated areas. So this case is very important to us for that certainty. Now, after an awfully long litigation process in the case, we're here, and we look forward to getting a commission determination in the matter. I'm not going to reiterate the arguments that Mr. Barkley has made. We agree with the positions that Murphy has taken, that both of the fields are single consuming facilities. And so I won't go into all of those arguments, but suffice it to say that we believe that the commission should grant Murphy's declaratory order request and find that the two fields are single consuming facilities, and that AEP Texas has a right to serve the two fields. Thank you.
Who next?
Did you want to do people in support of the petition first?
I can go next.
Sure.
Thank you, Chairman and Commissioners. Katie Coleman for TIC. This may not be clear from the record, Murphy Oil is not a TIC member. We're in this case exclusively because of concerns about the potential precedent. We have, as you know, manufacturing companies that are members of TIC and a broad range of businesses all over the state that could potentially be impacted by this decision. I think that our primary concern with the PFD is not necessarily where they came out, but the way they got there. In our opinion, it doesn't really provide a workable framework or regulatory certainty for other businesses going forward. And I think the key thing that's missing is tying the analysis to a lack of functional integration. They rely on items like the size of the facilities, the lack of contiguous property ownership, things that applied in a different set of circumstances could be impediments to sensible industrial development. And so what we are really looking for is, as I said, a framework that we can apply going forward and have reasonable certainty that we're complying with the law when we procure our electric supply.
Ms. Coleman, what
What is the sort of limiting principle to the test you lay out, functional and electrical integration? I mean, you say something like, well, there are limits to how big a distribution system can get, but that's not clear to me that that's.
So there's a couple things, and I'll give you, so that is one self-limiting factor. There's a cost associated with building private infrastructure. It's also very difficult to get property rights without having condemnation authority. So as a practical and cost matter, it's difficult for somebody to serve, all of their oil fields all over the state through private infrastructure. So that's a self-limiting factor. But the other thing that I've been thinking about a lot, because I have the same struggle with this that you do, what is the limitation to this? I think the thing that makes this case look like a single consuming facility relative to some other potential fact scenarios is distance between structures that are being served could indicate a lack of functional integration. A large swath of non-contiguous property, a large gap, could potentially indicate a lack of functional integration. And I think that's a fact question. But I don't think things like this is just too big, even if it's contiguous and it's being operated as a single consuming facility, that should be the guiding factor. Or there's a small sliver of property that goes through this parcel. To me, that doesn't go enough to functional integration to determine that this is not a single consuming facility. So I think at the end of the day, there could very easily be situations where, because the properties are separated, it indicates a lack of functional integration or other factors like that. But I don't, from what we have seen, think that that's the case here.
Thank you.
Good morning. Diana Liebman on behalf of South Texas Electric Cooperative. And just to be clear, what Murphy Oil and Murphy E&P are seeking to do here is to string together electric distribution facilities across 3 utility service territories. And this is something that the Commission first visited in docket 383 in the Robstown case, where a dance hall in STEC member Nueces' territory sought to take service from Robstown, even though they were in singly certificated territory. So they strung wires to Robstown, and Robstown said they'd serve them. But this commission didn't agree. This commission found that it is the consuming facility, the dance hall, that consumes the power and must take service from the utility with the right to serve the facility where the power is consumed.
But that dance hall was the consuming facility was the dance hall, and the dance hall was not in any certificated area there, right? That is.
It was in
They just ran a
Nueces'.
line with a meter at the end out to the, right?
Well, it was in Nueces Electric Cooperative singly certificated service territory. And then the dance hall ran their wires into the city of Robstown service territory where the meter was dropped.
Right.
Which is similar to what Murphy is doing here, which is they have consuming facilities in both Rio Grande and in Medina Electric Cooperative service territory, and they're running wires from those facilities so that they can connect to AEP. So it's the same situation that this commission has dealt with repeatedly. There were cases where the commission initially went away from the Robstown standard and instead said that they were going to use a best interest of the customer standard. And then that next case was the Cogdale case, and it was reversed on appeal, and then the commission went back and reversed all those prior precedents that relied on it. So we've actually been down this path before, and those cases are all in our briefing, so I won't go through those. But when the commission changed its mind on those cases, there was another case that was pending, and the hearings examiner's report had been issued, and it was docket 5264, the ARCO case, and the commission said that they were not going to allow ARCO to be considered a consuming facility served out of another territory because of the potential stranded investment and system planning issues and disruption of service provision by distribution service providers. The thing that seems to get lost in all of this is that on these cases, it's distribution service territory choice that we're talking about, something that PURA clearly bars. That's not part of the competitive market. Even under the newer cases, the Murphy single consuming facilities fail because it's speculative that these facilities will be built because Murphy hasn't even committed to build them. They're not necessary equipment in some larger facility. When the facilities are built, they'll be on competing leases that compete with one another. They're not interrelated. They don't function together. These areas cover 80 miles of Texas, and there are sizable portions where Murphy has no interests. there's not any support for this at all. I would just add one thing. The parties to this docket say they want certainty, but we actually had certainty for over 25 years until this single consuming facility analysis started again with Burleson.
Let me ask you about that, Ms. Lehman. The first half of your brief makes what looks like a statutory argument that this is all unlawful. And what would you, I mean, surely your argument isn't that a building that straddles two territories has to take electricity from one person in the kitchen and someone else in the bedroom, right? I mean, there must be an exception to that statute, right?
Well, that statute, I mean, with respect to the single building, which was the Burleson case, that building was wired to a certificated service territory. It was one building, and it was one customer, and it was inside of the service territory. The cases, as you go along, get further and further removed to multiple buildings, where some buildings could be served by one and some could be served by another. What's happening, though, is, and particularly in these cooperative territories, financing and the ability to continue the operation of the business is largely dependent on being able to go to the rural utility service or to financing entities and say, this is my service territory. I'm planning for load growth for wires and for generation. And I don't know where Mr. Barkley was looking in the record, but when Medina even talked about the costs, they were never approached and asked how much it would cost. They said on the record they couldn't tell how much it would cost. This is not about cost issues. It's about what happens to a service territory when it starts to be eroded over time because of distribution choice.
So what would you do with, your brief spends a lot of time talking about all these cases. How do you put them together? I mean, I found the PFD really unsatisfying, and I don't mean that as a criticism to the ALJ at all. I think the ALJ read our stuff and did their very best, but it's just a mishmash of sort of agency empowering 20-point standard. I mean, it's almost lawless. It's basically whatever is in front of us will decide based on the day of the week. And so none of that's very satisfying. So what do you think the sort of test for this should be?
Well, if it is in the service territory of the cooperative, then it should be served by that cooperative. If it's in the service territory of the investor-owned utility, it should be served by that IOU.
So you think if it's a school is on a boundary, the gym should be the co-op and the cafeteria should be AEP?
Yes, I do.
Okay, that's fair. Thank you.
Your Honor, Commissioners, Tammy Shea on behalf of Rio Grande Electric Cooperative. I just want to respond to Mr. Barkley's comments about customer-owned distribution systems. That's not what this case is about. We have tariff provisions that allow that. We have, given where we serve, we serve in West Texas and many counties in the Eagle Ford Shale. We serve many wells, many distribution facilities in that area, and there's never been an issue. There's never been an approach to ask us to cross service territories and string things together. So this isn't about customer-owned distribution systems. We don't have an issue with that. We allow it, and we have plenty of it. In fact, we serve facilities in this area that we're talking about right now. But in terms of functional integration, I think when you're talking about an oil field, there's reasons why the commission could have found that Cogdell was much different and had a lot more elements of functional integration in this case. Ms. Liebman mentioned the competition issue. These leases are in competition in each other. And the Cogdell unit, they're not. If you inject liquid into one unit so that you can increase production in another well, everybody benefits from that. That's not the case here. These leases are competing. If you do something on the KBS lease that affects the Cone lease, then they're competing with each other.
So you think unitization or pooling should make a difference?
I think that is one factor that helped the commission get there, is because of the way they operated the system. Also, I think the ALJ was looking at a lot of factors and weighing all the factors, and one of the factors was size. It wasn't the only factor. If you look at Cogdell, you have one lease for every 29 acres. I mean, it's very compact and very evenly spaced if you look at the diagrams. When you look at the North Field, it's one well for every 246 acres. South Field, it's one well for every 449 acres. So we're talking about vastly spaced areas. Another important factor was the electric distribution system was already in place and had been in place, since the 50s. And in this case, there is none. I'm not saying there has to be one. There can be one that's planned, but that was just another factor that influenced the ALJs. Also, when you look at the Cogdale unit, the Railroad Commission sees it as one unit. I mean, you report as one lease. Murphy reports as 30 leases for the two fields, 30 different leases. So, all of these factors, when you look at the Cogdale unit, I think there was enough there for the commission to get there where there are a lot of differences in this case.
I'd be happy to punt this case to the Railroad Commission, if that's what you're suggesting.
Right. Sure.
I don't think you have that option. I think that would take a statutory change. Mr. Wright?
Yes, John T. Wright on behalf of Texas Electric Cooperatives. Chairman, Commissioners, I'd like to respond briefly to TIEC's arguments on the practical limitations to a consuming facility. Texas Electric Cooperatives, or TEC, has maintained throughout this case that what Murphy is proposing is an attack on the Pure Utility Certification Framework that would have policy implications for both the competitive and non-competitive areas of Texas. Arguments by Murphy and aligned parties that practical realities would limit the size of a single consuming facility ignore the reality that certain entities, such as pipeline companies, transportation providers, water and sewer systems, etc., already have rights-of-way or condemnation authority that could be utilized to create a single consuming facility that could expand without limit. TEC believes that a common sense limit should be placed on what constitutes a consuming facility under PURA and would urge the Commission to rule against Murphy's request.
Thanks.
Staff?
Karen Hubbard for Commission staff. Our remarks are going to be very limited in general. The facts in this case are just not as clear-cut as those in the previous cases we've had involving single consuming facilities, the Cogdale case, the Burleson case, the IRA ISD cases. Applying a very broad construction, however, staff thinks that possibly the fields could be viewed as single consuming facilities. The PFD, in our opinion, did not provide the certainty that we need, however. So we're happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
If you've got any thoughts on what the test should be, I'd love to hear it.
Well, we've come up with some rather unique ideas. One is we've used the gathering system test that we discussed actually in our exceptions, that both fields, the north and south fields, each have two gathering systems. And you could possibly liken them to electric transmission line, which is one line, but it's composed of several different links. And it's, if you view the gathering system that way, but once again, it was an option that actually we came up with after briefing.
Are we done? Okay.
So how do y'all want to move forward? Sometimes we go to the next open meeting. So I don't know if y'all want to do that, or if you want to, sorry, can you hear me? Or if you want to move forward.
I'm not sure. You want to talk about it a little bit and see
Sure.
where we all are?
Because I'm not sure you and I'm close.
I don't know where I am. I don't know where I am on this yet. I've kind of gone back and forth. And when I first read the PFD, my reaction was that this is crazy, and I was actually kind of drawn to a more straightforward test. But that said, this does feel. I am worried that this seems to be going a little too far, and there is some suggestion in the record that if we say yes to this, then the next case is right around the corner, and it might maybe even more extreme. And so I'm not quite sure where I am.
I mean, I would say, it's the different commission precedents, they don't necessarily help reach a conclusion, I think, in this situation. And so, I completely have sympathy that everybody would like some regulatory certainty about what is a single consuming facility, but it seems like there's not, so far I haven't seen a proposal that makes sense.
Right. It may not be like the transmission line CCN, where it just a million factors and we all just figure this out one day. But I don't know. That's bothering me. I feel like we should be able to do better than that. Not just to give other people certainty, but some sense like in some sense bind like the commission in the future so that we actually can say like on this set of facts, we know what the outcome will be. And I don't think we're there right now. I think it's just gonna, each one of these, we would have to sit around and talk and get some kind of intuition about it, and that's not very satisfying. But I think, I agree with you, that's kind of where our precedents are right now. And maybe oil fields have to be treated their own way in this, but.
So, and this comes back from my first service here at the commission. I'm a pretty firm believer in service area boundaries. We created them for a reason, and I'm a pretty firm believer in that. I know that there are facts that can take you to a different answer, i.e. a high school that straddles it. They should not have to have half of it on one provider and half on the other. I struggled with the PFD, probably for a lot of the reasons you did. I ultimately got to adopting the PFD, but modifying it pretty significantly to take out some conclusions of law that I just don't think are necessary to this decision. I know Stephen talked to me about opening a rulemaking. I don't think that's the answer, because I think these are all fact-specific.
Completely agree.
I understand wanting certainty, but I think it's just not there when you go down this line.
Only been here a year.
But I do not
Either way.
think that this facility meets whatever test we do.
Yeah, I don't, really my bigger concern is getting that test. I agree, a rulemaking would be a disaster. There's no way that would provide certainty. It would just be, it'd be very confusing, because I think that, we can't come to a conclusion here, and I think it would depend on where you are, how rural it is, or you're
1,000
talking about
what
West
ifs.
Texas.
Yeah.
So yeah, so what do you think, so I agree with the high school thing, that makes sense to me. There was I saw an old Smitherman dissent, I think he was suggesting if 51% gets it or something, if you just figure out who's got the majority and that person gets the whole thing. I mean, that provides some certainty, but it's not terribly satisfying either, but I think I'm with you on this case, that this case feels like a bookend too far. But, I definitely don't, not for the reasons the PFD says, although, again, it's not a criticism of the ALJ, it's just our precedents are sort of all over the place.
Yeah, I mean, on the PFD, I was kind of like you as I went. It was like you described it, but I think it got to the answer I think is the correct answer.
I agree with that.
Okay.
So I don't know if what you want to do. I was going to recommend adopting the PFD, but deleting, I don't know if y'all want to look at these and come back or what, finding fact 28 and conclusion of laws 5 through 10, because I don't think they're necessary to the decision, and they're actually reaffirming past decisions that I'm not sure I'm ready to do.
I'm fine with, you had me at the word delete.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Finding of fact 28, I didn't write down the page numbers, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine.
28 is on page 21 of the PFD, and then 5 through 10 of the conclusions of law are on that page in the following.
Yeah, that's fine. And what about, do you want to give Cadam a chance to sort of, redo, put a little more,
Teeth in it? Yes, sure.
do you mind taking a stab at this? I mean, we talked about it too, it doesn't seem entirely grounded in the record and the reasons why this is different to me. You don't want to take a stab at that?
No, absolutely, I'm
Okay.
pretty happy to.
Okay.
Okay, why don't y'all bring something back to us in the next meeting?
Okay.
How about that? Is that okay with you?
That'd be great.
Okay. Do you need more from us, Carlos?
We'll give you more than you can give somebody.
Okay, we'll do that. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Item number 7 is docket number 47186. A motion to abate this proceeding was filed sometimes this week. I would like to go ahead and Irene, or whoever in docket management to go ahead and cancel the hearing. I don't think the three of us should be keeping our calendars open for something that is likely settled. I think that's a good decision by the parties and wish it had been made before we'd spent a lot of effort already on it.
Okay, we can issue an order to that effect.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that makes sense, although I just would add that, you know, I hope they do set, like, I don't want to cancel the hearing and then, you know, I agree we should cancel it. Part of my reluctance is, you know, sometimes it is the presence of a hearing on the calendar that focuses the parties' minds. And I hope they will, even if we cancel it, they will keep themselves focused on settlement.
Well, that was my hope with the comments I made, is
That was
we've already
reiterating.
spent time we shouldn't have spent.
And so in that realm, I guess, just instruct docket management to issue the order of abatement as well as canceling the hearing, and to monitor this process and report back as necessary.
Yes. We don't need a motion for that, do we?
We understood your instructions.
Okay. Agenda item number 8 is docket number 48629. I know it's unusual for me to have asked that this be posted and to discuss it. Warren, you're going to need to come up, and maybe Chad. The ERCOT study, and the studied 5 options, and they ranged in costs for $214.4 million to $281.8 million. And this was approved last December at the board meeting for the $214 million. The application that was filed, I also handed that to you, the cost attachment to that. Mine printed out much bigger than y'all's, so I am lucky that y'all are younger and can actually read y'all's. But it ranges in cost estimates from $481 million to now I can't even read mine, $695 million, which is a pretty significant cost increase from what ERCOT studied. I don't know that there's a process at ERCOT for these type of situations, but in my view, and I wanted to get Warren up here to ask him, if option 3 in your study, and I don't know if you need my little printout, had been $481 million, which is the least cost, do you think you would have picked one of these other options?
So Warren Lasher, speaking for ERCOT. Madam Chair, there were specific electrical reasons why the option that was selected was selected.
Okay.
The cost is a consideration, but we would be looking for the most cost-effective option. So we would be looking at the ability to serve the customer demand in addition to the cost.
Do you think this is something that, and I know there's not a process for y'all to look at it, and Chad, that's why I asked you to come up from the legal perspective. Is this something you think y'all should look at again, or just move forward with what's there?
Let me start by saying we have done a little bit of looking at it since we were told that the costs had increased significantly. I think it's important to state at the beginning that from our analysis, our very preliminary analysis, neither the need nor the timing of the need for the project has changed. Mm-hmm. So that's not really something that's I think we have seen. You know, when we looked at this project electrically, there just are not that many options to get to that part of the state and serve this increasing customer demand. Where we are right now is we can't say if there would be another option that we might have found to be more cost effective, but I think it's unlikely.
Okay.
So we are we're very happy to look at it again if you would like to request that. But, I do think it's with the understanding that there are very limited options, and it's unlikely that we're going to see something different.
I mean, some of these numbers are approaching the cost of just putting a nuclear power plant there. mean, this
I
is-
would find reason to argue with that, with that assessment. But, I mean, the costs have increased significantly.
Okay, I would still like for Stephen, if y'all are okay with it, for him to bring a preliminary order that touches on some of these issues, because, and I need y'all to look at whatever processes y'all can weigh in on this stuff, because if y'all are saying this is the only option,
I can't say that.
I know you didn't say that.
I can't say that today.
but these are significant cost increases, and there are things on here that you considered that are much different.
It is my understanding, based on the information that Centerpoint has filed in the docket, that much of the increased cost is associated with the portions of the segments very, very close to the actual termination point at the customer demand. So, again, that leads to the there were other options that we looked at, but all of the options ended up at Jones Creek.
Okay.
So, but again, I can't, without having my engineers take a good hard look at it, I can't really tell you.
So option 5 that was upgrading existing lines,
There were electrical reasons why that was
That
not.
was not, okay.
That was not. But, again, it's possible that if, so let me take a step back. When we're doing this type of analysis, often we do increasingly complex analysis as we get further and further into the study. And those increasingly complex analyses take longer and longer to do. So we try to pare down the options before we get to some of those more complex analyses. So if we have options that clearly are going to be more expensive, we would eliminate those before we got further down in the analysis. So it is possible that the option for upgrading the lines, because it looked clearly more expensive in the initial phases of the analysis, we would not have fully fleshed out that analysis. And that's exactly what I'm saying. I can't really tell you. But the upgrading of the lines incurred significant costs, and it would have incurred significant congestion while those lines were being upgraded. And so that's kind of an initial take of, let's, maybe a new line is better in this case. But again, that was before we had these actual costs in
Okay.
mind.
So, again, I'd like to probably, I can't tell people how to put their cases on, but I've been saying this for a year now, that, I really need ERCOT to weigh in on this, and I want to be clear, I'm not going to trust these huge shifts in costs without having ERCOT weigh in my opinion.
It's a really big increase.
Really big.
Chairman, this is Chad Seeley with ERCOT. I mean, there's ways for ERCOT, obviously, to participate in this case as an intervener for the limited purpose if that's something that needs to be done. I mean, so if the commission's asking us to kind of go back and look at, is this still the most cost-effective, reliable solution, we can do that with an appropriate time frame and work with the applicant on how we get that information into this docket.
I'm going to need that, y'all. I am going to need
Yep.
that.
I agree. I would really appreciate it.
And as far as the process back over at ERCOT, there's not really a process that allows us to go back through the RPG up to the board, so it's just.
And that's not what I'm looking
Yeah,
for at
so I think
all.
it's just kind of a case-by-case applicant CCN in which ERCOT may need to participate. That's
Yeah,
the only thing I can think of.
I'd be looking for your expertise, not the stakeholder process to weigh in.
Okay.
Right.
Fine.
Okay, thank y'all. Stephen, do you need anything else from us? You want to come back? We have a lot more to do.
Yeah, let me,
Okay.
Think a little bit.
Okay, we'll hold that one then. 9, 10, 11, do you have anything on 10 or 11?
I do not.
Okay. 12 are not taken up. Item number 13, project number 48158. Thank you, Daryl, for all your work again. I was fine with his report. I didn't know if y'all wanted to discuss it.
Yeah, I
Okay.
had one thought.
Sure.
Is it, I don't know how burdensome it is to move these things around, but does it make sense to bring wet in early and push either Centerpoint or AP back to where wet was gonna come in, given the numbers? I mean, is that a huge problem, like, Daryl, for you guys if we, or for, I mean, also, I don't know how much AP and Centerpoint have geared up to do, what are they coming in April? I don't want to be disruptive, but wet's numbers are pretty eye-popping, and so if it's easy to bring them in early and push someone else back, then it's something I think we should consider.
So on wet, I'm sorry, Daryl, I know you were
Yeah,
about to
that's
say
okay.
something, but you can wait.
You're the chairman.
So on wet, is it something where you need a full rate case, or is it something where y'all can look at it like y'all did some in the past? You know what I'm talking about? I don't know what y'all called those.
Yes, ma'am. Darrell Tejan on behalf of staff. I think it's certainly plausible. As stated in the memo, the wet filing date of October 1st, of course, that's what's currently in the recently adopted scheduling rule. I don't know that there's anything that would prevent parties in the commission from reaching an agreement with wet if circumstances played out in that way. I think the expectation has just been that they would be filing a rate case at that time. With regard to Centerpoint, Commissioner D'Andrea, again, I will defer to the parties' views on this, but Centerpoint has basically agreed with the affected stakeholders to come in at the time by May 1st, excuse me, by April 30th, as stated in the memo. So I'm not sure if you would need to sort of get agreement from all the parties
By
on that.
statute, we can get wet here February 1, can't we?
I think that would probably work out per the statute, yes, sir.
Would that be a problem to have them here in February and then a couple months later? Please be honest with me. I'm not trying, I have no sense of the work schedule I would be imposing on you guys.
Staff will do what the commission wants us to do. You may have some thoughts from WED as to whether it is reasonably feasible for them to prepare a rate filing package by that time. I don't know if anyone from WED is here.
Dennis Donnelly on behalf of Wind Energy Transmission Texas. Certainly understand your concerns with the earnings this year. Be mindful that is 1 year in a vacuum. If you'd go back and look historically, I think last year we were a little over earning, but in our existence, that was actually still under-earning cumulatively. Secondly, we've met with Daryl and kind of kept them updated on, I think, 2 or 3 CapEx projects and a building acquisition that if we come in early next year, means we'll have to file another rate case next year to bring those into rates because of the way the system works. And so, you know, certainly we'll do whatever you all want. We're willing to work with them, but this is a question of if we file February 1, we realistically are going to have to file another one next year to get those pieces brought in. Where if it's later in the year, those kind of get grouped in together. And so certainly it's y'all's decision, but that's kind of part of the process of we've worked with Daryl and expect to, I think we have another meeting with a group this afternoon on those infrastructure projects as well. So just a bit of history to give you all the full view of it. Wasn't just a snapshot.
So let me say, on AP, they've been out a long time. And on Centerpoint, I wanted to bring them in last year because their transmission rates of return are way higher than this overall. And I think there's a true imbalance between the distribution and the transmission for them. And I really want to get that fixed.
I agree, and they're so big that it kind of may dwarf whatever, you know, distortion wet introduces.
No, you're fine.
Commissioners, if I may, could I ask Mr. Donnelly one cross-examination question?
Sure. This will be fun.
Thank
I
you.
know better than to say no, Daryl.
It's just one question.
You want Irene to swear him in?
The second filing that you mentioned, Could that not be done through an interim type of filing?
I don't believe it can because it's a purchase that can't be brought in through that process. There's a piece that could, like a control center could, but the rest of it, which is the bulk of it, I don't believe can. And so I'm happy we can talk through that, but that's my understanding. And so there's a lag. It's small dollars in billions and trillions of dollars, but to WED, it's a significant amount of money that would force another rate case pretty quickly over a pretty small investment. And so that's just timing. Daryl, does that help?
Somewhat. I guess I'm still not entirely clear as to what the conflict would be, but we can talk about it offline.
I don't disagree with the numbers are alarming, but I also have concerns about delaying the other two another year because of their situation, so.
I agree with that. The delay seems like a bad answer, but why don't you guys just keep talking and just keep an eye on this?
Yes.
I can't imagine why y'all couldn't get something done like y'all were able to do with other companies in the past,
Just keep your conversation
when they
going.
were being reasonable.
Hint, hint. Madam Chairman,
Yes.
if I may, I need to make one correction to the memo, if I could, for the
Okay.
record. On page 3, the very last paragraph, the section entitled Additional Discussion, Sharyland Utilities, in that very first sentence of that very last paragraph on the 3rd page, the words transmission and distribution are transposed. As corrected, the sentence should read, in late 2017, Sharyland and Encore entered into a transaction in which Sharyland swapped its distribution assets for a corresponding amount of Encore's transmission assets. And I have to say that out of the no doubt many millions of people who read this memo, the only people who let me know that was, or who caught it, or at least let me know about it, were the folks at Encore. Give a shout out to them and Steve Ragland in particular, so I appreciate that they kept me on my toes. I just wanted to note that for the record.
Thank you for your work on this. Why don't, if it's okay with y'all, let's go ahead and bring you back next open meeting to give us any type of update on if anything has gotten to where would be a good answer, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Agenda item 14, project number 48551. I am fine opening up 25505. I want to, I think you could read the memo that it would be limited to those two issues. I want to open it up more broadly. I went through and y'all can see all the pink highlighting of things that are just old. I mean, it talks about the zonal market. So I would like to open it up broadly and clean it up, as most people know, and especially people on staff know, is I am trying to push a real effort to clean up our rules, and I think this is a great start to doing just that.
I agree. Great.
So,
Sounds great.
okay. 15, 16, 17 are not taken up. 18 was consented. 19, 20, 21, 22 not taken up. Do you want to discuss whatever we put on hold, or do the closed session and come back and discuss that? I can't even remember what we put on hold.
Let's go to closed session.
Okay. Okay, having convened in a duly noticed open meeting, the commission will now at 10:18 a.m. on September 27th, 2018, hold a closed session pursuant to Chapter 551 of the Texas Government Code. It will consult with its attorneys pursuant to Section 551.071 of the Code, deliberate personnel matters pursuant to Section 551.074 of the Code, and deliberate security matters pursuant to Section 551.076 of the Code. Tell me when you're really ready this time.
I'm good to go. No, we don't want you going.
The closed session is concluded at, I can't see my time. 11:22 a.m. on September 27, 2018, and the commission will resume its public meeting. I will entertain a motion that the commission intervene in FERC docket numbers EL 18-201 and EL 18-199.
You have your motion.
Second.
I will entertain a motion to authorize me to work with outside counsel on issues related to FERC dockets involving SPP.
You have your motion.
Second.
This is long, so sorry. Stephen wrote it. I didn't write it. The executive director previously issued a notice of violation against the Castlecombe water system for providing retail water service without a CCN. TCEQ has referred violations related to this water system to the Attorney General to seek compliance with its rules. I believe that we should ask the Attorney General to institute suit against this water system to obtain compliance with our rules and to seek a civil penalty if appropriate. The referrals should include any violation of our rules, not just the failure to obtain a CCN for water service. And we should ask the Attorney General to join our suit with TCEQ's suit. Therefore, I would entertain a motion to request the AG to file suit against Castlecombe Water System or any other appropriate entity to obtain compliance with the Commission's rules in the Water Code and seek a civil penalty if appropriate, and to join our suit with TCEQ so that all compliance matters related to this water system can be resolved in a single proceeding.
Do you mind repeating that? So moved.
Second.
In addition, I would entertain a motion to request SOA to return docket number 47425, which is the notice of violation issued to Castlecombe.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Anything else, Smarty Pants?
No, sorry.
Okay. This meeting
No,
of
no.
the public, oh, what?
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
we do.
Yeah,
Let-
we do.
Okay.
So I'm
Let
gonna
me go back to it, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so we're back at item number 8, docket number 48629. Yes, sir. Thank you for reminding me.
Okay, so typically, we have a standard order referral on these types of cases. We will not issue that. We'll bring you a preliminary order specifically for this case. And if I understand the concerns right, we will add issues that relate to whether or not there are alternatives to meet the need to provide, to serve the additional load down there, and focus upon cost effectiveness aspects of that.
Can we be more specific and ask
I
for
can when I
ERCOT
write it, but right now.
ERCOT input? You're talking over me, by the way.
I know, I'm not being nice, am I?
Can we be more specific and ask for ERCOT input, or is that not appropriate for a preliminary order? You want to think about it and bring back a preliminary?
I'll bring
order?
back one and, yes, ma'am.
I'm trying to control the record. Go ahead, I'm not going to talk, you talk.
I will try and craft something up, and then if you like it, you can use it or modify it, and if you don't, we'll cut it, but, yeah.
Okay. Bring it back at the next open meeting, whenever that may be. Is that it?
Yes.
Y'all have anything else?
Clearly, we were talking about 47426 then.
What?
Yes.
Docket to recall also.
Oh, the docket recall from SOA was 47426.
Right.
Oh, I said 2-5.
Did I type it wrong?
Yes, you did.
I move we amend it accordingly.
Okay. It's, the docket we're calling back from SOA is 47426. Okay. Did y'all already vote?
I move we amend what you said previously to reflect the new number.
Second.
Okay, are we done now?
I hope so.
JP, you have anything?
I'm good to go.
Okay. With that, this meeting of the Public Utility Commission of Texas is adjourned.